Hi, I'm Sterling, and today you're going to hear some American English in context, where we're going to connect verbs together with and without the preposition to. Don't go away. This boring part is really short. I'll hurry up with that. Most verbs require that when you connect a second verb to the first verb, you use the preposition to. And some verbs, a smaller number of verbs, require that the verb to is not there. And these include modal auxiliary verbs like may, might, can, could, should, would, those kind of verbs, and a handful of verbs that are not auxiliary verbs. So, without further ado, let's end the boring part. No long introductions. As promised, let's give this some practice right now. Okay, here we go. This is called the scenario of the 1984 New World Order of English. Have you read the book 1984 by George Orwell? If you have read it, you'll identify with this video. But if you have not read it, perhaps this scenario might inspire you to investigate this novel. And at the same time, we're going to demonstrate when in English it's necessary to connect two verbs together with the preposition to, and when it is not necessary. So here we go. Who wouldn't want to be able to speak perfectly in another language, let alone in their own language? I fail to understand why languages cannot simply adopt one new rule, and that rule would be rules may no longer be broken. I can imagine that the difficulties with learning a new language would just be wiped away. And in this scenario, society would be very serious about the need for rules never to be broken. But you might not want to break any rule in this new society. So, what if society, if government decided to create a language system where rules are no longer allowed to be broken? How could this be made possible? Could it? Even if language experts agree, even if they managed to agree on one set of universal language standards, actually changing the way people speak would be nearly impossible. People would simply refuse to change. People naturally tend to keep their old habits of speech. But would they if they were forced to change? What if a totalitarian government decided that it was necessary to enforce the alteration, the change of the way people speak? In a way, this is already happening now. Your thoughts and actions are already being controlled, and you are being controlled, and you are being controlled by fear. What would be the ultimate step in this kind of a scenario? The ultimate step might be the removal of your right to speak the language you want to speak in the way that you want to speak it. And that would become a new government objective, an objective of a totalitarian new world order. So imagine yourself in this potential situation. The elites, the ultra-rich, the people already in control of the world and those who already would be successfully conditioned to what they want, all of those people would favor this new world order in which all citizens promise to swear allegiance to new speech rules. And they might favor the implementation of speech mandates. And these speech mandates, speech requirements, would work like this. Not only would it be required to promise to speak by the new rules, but there would be severe penalties for not doing so. To just try to remember to change your speech wouldn't be sufficient. There would be a 3 strikes and you're out rule, like in baseball. Should you forget to speak correctly, some bad things could happen. Would you like to think about how this might be? Then let's let the imagination begin. Do you think that if tomorrow it were announced that English has a new set of unbreakable rules, that anyone at all would start to speak by the new rules automatically? Of course not. They would need motivation. Right now, I know nobody could make me agree to that. Nobody could make me agree to do that. I would be a rebel, I'm quite sure. But what if they were to intimidate us with fear? And they're already doing this, by the way. Then only those actually dedicated to the cause of allegiance to this new world order would actually want to comply. But a decision contrary to the new orders might turn out to be very bad for your health in this new society, because you would live constantly under the threat of government-imposed fear. In addition to a new speech propaganda program designed to create a society completely obedient to a new world order, this government would need to implement a new legal entity called the speech police. The speech police would be under the authority of the thought police. And the thought police, of course, would control thought, while the speech police would control its proper expression. And the sworn duty of both organizations would be to help to implement the enforcement of proper speech and, of course, of thought. The thought police would first need to make contact with every citizen to be sure that everyone was aware of the new speech laws. I think I might just say, just try to make me talk differently. Ain't gonna happen. I dare you to try. But this attitude in this society could be very dangerous, because under this new regime, the thought police and the speech police would have absolute authority. If you did not comply, they would have the authority to arrange to make your life very uncomfortable. And anyone who attempts to resist would be taken away. They might just mysteriously disappear without a trace. Resistors would simply cease to exist from the perspective of these speech police. And they would not just threaten to make you change your speech, they would eliminate anyone who would choose not to comply with the new rules of thought and speech. As such, would you be forced to learn to change your speech patterns? what would happen to those who refuse? They would cease to exist. In fact, not only do they cease to exist, they would be forgotten, as if they never existed in the first place. What would you do in this scenario? Would you forget to speak by the new language rules, or would you be an obedient and compliant citizen? The propaganda that would be broadcast at you night and day would encourage you to learn, to think, and speak as the authorities direct you, because it's patriotic. If you purposely intended to say something wrong, the thought police would already know it, and the speech police would be there to take you away just as soon as you say it. So you should plan to think and speak correctly. Or would you prefer to disappear without explanation? You will learn to like to speak the new language. You will learn to love to speak the new language under penalty of, well, there officially is no death in this utopian society. You cease to exist by the will of the government. Because in this system there is no God, there is only the New World Order, and they will decide when you will live and when you will die. What would you do? Could you afford not to be compliant? Or would your untimely disappearance be perhaps the wisest choice for you in the end? Because you would lose your own will. What you mean to say will become what they want you to say, always. And you might hope to find your way out of this nightmare because you would know that you can expect to receive the most unpleasant circumstances should you speak incorrectly. Will you decide to say what you want to say, or will you be resigned to recite only what they want you to say? I hate to tell you this, but you would lose all self-will. You would become only a puppet animated by the New World Order. All of this is why there continue to be independent languages with rules that are not rules. They can be broken because we human beings have free will. For now, at least. What do you think? Maybe this scenario could be in your future. Tell me what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. And subscribe to this channel or suffer the penalty of the New World Order. See you next time. Bye.